Dino Beganovic has found great form the second he stepped into an F2 car, almost allowing us to forget his underwhelming F3 campaign. Hello and welcome fellow motorsports fans. Between Yas Marina and Suzuka, another 4 single-seater seasons have finished, while Formula E introduced new technology at its season opener. And as always, I'm here to tell you all about it, so let's go. We begin with F1 Academy, where another Abbey-pulling dominated weekend was really the most fitting way to end the year. The story I want to draw attention to more is the Prema camp, and no, not Dorian Parr, because we know what quality she is made of, but instead Maya Wurch and Tina Hausmann, because in fact both had their best result of the year here, but it does tell two very different stories. In Maya Wurch's case, it was her maiden win, and I was actually almost surprised to see she hadn't somehow won a race before this year, but it does go to show she really was one of our 3 consistent front runners, so it does make a whole lot of sense that she finally took the top step of the podium. Hausmann's case is a lot more worrying for me though, because she got a P4 as her best result of the year, and in fact her second best result of the year was in the very first race of the year in Jeddah. So this isn't great. Her previous best was only a P6, so not great in and of itself, and the P4 here was mostly because of a lot of penalties ahead and a lot of carnage in the very last race of the year, as you'd expect, you know, last days of school kind of vibes. So really, I am expecting a lot more from Hausmann if she returns, but unfortunately, much like Bianca Bustamante last week, I feel like I have to call her out as one of the more underwhelming girls of the grid. Then, on the flip side, we do have one of our surprises of the year, or at least one of the nice stories of the year, with Leah Block, who somehow, some way didn't score any points this weekend, with, you know, quite a few mistakes along the way. But she is so fun to watch when she's on the charge, and she was here in the 3rd race, working her way up all the way to P3. Yes, she spun out Hamda Al-Kibaisi and thus got herself penalised way out of contention, but it does go to show the progress she's made from her very clumsy start at the beginning of the year in the Formula Winter Series to this year, fighting for podiums against at least the other best women in the world. So good steps there, and again, she will definitely be one of the title favourites next year, there's no doubt in my mind. Last but not least, I do have to bring up Chloe Chambers' bittersweet end to the year with a P2 in the 2nd race, but unfortunately missing out on the chance to take P4 overall because she did get herself into 2 separate incidents into the other races. Quite unlucky on her part. It wasn't even her to blame for all of these. For example, Dorian Parr did wipe her out in the last race of the year in turn 1, so unfortunate on her part. But she is also clearly another one of those highly anticipated prospects for the coming season, and I have said it again and again, I am really looking forward to next year's Formula 1 Academy. Over to Formula 2, where a few penalties set us up for the perfect final, only for Isaac Hadjar to gift Gabriel Bortoleto the title off the line, and Joshua fucking Dirksen got his 2nd feature win somehow, some way. I don't even know anymore. Bortoleto is easily the most impressive driver of the year, there is no doubt about it, simply given the fact that he is a rookie, but I have said it multiple times over the course of the year and I will stand by it. Hadjar should have really won this title, and I think he always just goes a little underrated in the community because, let's face it, he is an annoying streamer. He is an annoying screamer kind of driver, you know what I mean. He is obnoxious to listen to on the radio and everything, and doesn't seem to have the attitude side of things figured out yet. But there is no doubt in my mind that the guy can drive, and he has probably driven the best season out of anyone here. But unfortunately, the luck just wasn't on his side enough times to actually bring the title over the line. But since we have talked about this many times over the course of the season, I don't even want to go on about it too much. Instead, I want to highlight the guy I've mentioned in the intro, Dino Beganovic. After everything I said in my F3 review, which you can watch somewhere up here or up here in case you've missed it so far, he has really clicked with this F2 car immediately. It's so good to see. This is way more in line with the sort of Dino Beganovic We expected in F3 this year a little bit. Of course, he is a known quantity in the sense that he is clearly a super talented young driver, and I hope he will continue this trend in F2. He has been announced as a high-tech driver for next year, so given everything we know, this could set him up for a potential title assault, at the very least as much as it did set up Paul Aron this year. He got his maiden podium in the sprint race here thanks to a disqualification for, well, funnily enough, Paul Aron, and another solid top 10 in the other race. So really, he was even making Jack Crawford looking rather underwhelming over this weekend. I did forget our surprise debutant John Bennett last week, so I feel like I had to bring him up here. Very cool to get points on debut last time out, but he was expectedly anonymous here. He is confirmed for F3 for next season anyway, so very much the correct choice there in my book as a GB3 graduate. He does seem to have a decent plan regarding his career in that sense, I suppose. So if this was just extra seat time for him, I am all about this move. Similar story, well, in terms of the anonymous nature of the drive, we had Leonardo Fornaroli finally giving his F2 debut ahead of his full season campaign next year. And yeah, expectedly, he didn't really do a whole lot, but again, this is all expected. There's really no need to go too deep into detail about the likes of Kush Miney or even Joshua Dirksen and all the other drivers, because we will have a proper F2 review video coming up hopefully at the end of the week, maybe early next week, something like this. So just keep your eyes open for that, and we'll move on to F1 proper. In F1, McLaren managed to hold on to the Constructors' title while Sainz and Leclerc had one last glorious run together. It really was a race to say goodbye for many. This was like the dominant storyline in my mind this weekend. Unfortunately, both Bottas and K-Mag crashed out and couldn't get the send-off they deserved, which I thought was really sad to see. Sure, K-Mag in particular wasn't super great to watch during his second F2 stint, but at least he always brought some entertaining shenanigans to the table, and I am looking forward to his endurance comeback with BMW. In case you have missed this, he will be back racing next year, presumably in a hypercar somewhere. Zhou Guanyu also did go out about as quietly as he has been throughout his F1 career, so really 3 drivers leaving after quite a few years in the series with not much noise made about them, unfortunately. We did have Jack Doohan's debut. He didn't embarrass himself, but considering it was one of Alpine's best weekends of the year, it wasn't particularly inspiring either, but truth be told, again, a last race debut in F1 of all series, I don't really think we can judge him based on that at all. The real story here is really Alpine denying Esteban Ocon a proper last race, which is a real shame, but super fitting and on brand for the team, because let's face it, they have behaved like cunts quite a few times in the past, so it's very much on brand, but I don't know why you don't want to let your drivers leave on good terms in case you might need them again in the future. The big question remaining is really the Paris question, where, I mean, we will hopefully know the solution in a couple of days or weeks or whatever, but my favorite outcome by far would be Tsunoda finally getting that one-time shot at Red Bull, even if we probably all know it would only be a one-season thing, and Hadjar getting the promotion he very much deserves, because I don't think he should be wasting away as a reserve driver, and obviously it looks like Red Bull won't continue sending junior drivers to Super Formula, so what else would it leave for Hadjar? I don't know. If you've got a better guess, let me know down in the comments. We move on to a different side of the world with Japanese F4, where Yuto Nomura finished the Honda-dominated year in style, but the amount of crashes made for barely any racing. Very unfortunate in that sense, and sadly a theme for the Japanese F4, which just goes to show, I guess, it's not the greatest idea to pair a bunch of young drivers with a bunch of gentleman drivers that like racing F4 cars. I think it's brilliant that Japan has that sort of culture where they can support a grid of gentleman F4 drivers, but really, realistically, I guess they should be racing separately, on the same weekend, but one after each other, because the gentlemen typically bring out the safety cars, denying the youngsters from getting the very valuable experience they're there to gain. The second BMX Honda driver, Ryota Hirashi, got disqualified in the last race of the year. promoting independent runner Kotaro Shimbara to his maiden victory, and thus also promoting him ahead of the lead Toyota junior Yuki Sano, funnily enough, to P3 overall in the standings. Overall, Shimbara is back from a terrible 2022 and after taking a break in 2023, so I really don't know what that means for his future at all, what his financial situation looks like, but at the very least with the driving he's displayed here, he looks like a title contender for next season, so I would be all for that. It was a very consistent sort of improving learning curve over the course of the year, all the way to being a regular podium contender in the second half of the season. Yuki Sano, on the other hand, disappointed slightly at the end of the day, but as mentioned before, he was very much comfortably the best of the four Toyota boys, so I'm sure he will be another name we will have to deal with more often in the future. And now over to Brazil for the Formula E season opener, and what a chaotic season opener it was, somehow ending with Mitch Evans on top, Taylor Barnard on the podium, and both Pascal Wehrlein and Nick Cassidy in the wall. There was a highly entertaining new dynamic introduced for this year with the new four-wheel drive attack mode, which now made the attack mode a proper overtaking tool instead of just a tool you sort of have to use to sacrifice track position twice over the course of the race. That's what it used to be like. It effectively just acted as a mini pit stop, forcing people to try and open a gap, which they could then use the attack mode in without sacrificing track position. But now it looks like they can actually use it more for the intended purpose, at least given the name, for attacking, and it was great to watch. Unfortunately, as far as the actual racing goes, the power dynamics of the teams, it's very early to tell because not only, well, it was one single race, of course, go figure, but as I said, it was very chaotic and very crashy towards the tail end of the race, where we could have otherwise seen who's got what level of energy saved up and all these sorts of things. The one thing we can say is Porsche, Jaguar and DS Penske in particular all looked like the top dogs, especially during the sort of pack racing phase. We did have some appearances from Ollie Rowland again, so Nissan is still there with the right driver, and of course the McLarens did come in super hot at the end of the race. With the McLarens in particular, I would love to know whether that was like just very good energy management and that late charge was always going to come, or if they were really almost exclusively aided by the chaos. Basically, well, the answer is going to be somewhere in between, but I would like to know where on that spectrum exactly it was. Either way, it ended up with Taylor Barnard getting a stunningly early maiden podium, and of course, as a big Taylor Barnard fan, I am very, very happy about that. Looking forward to the rest of the season. Again, it was very entertaining, but also very crashy in sort of classic Formula E fashion, and oddly felt a bit like, you know, the last day of school vibes we've talked about in the F1 Academy, even though this is of course the season opener. I have a weird feeling like the timing on the calendar does play a role there. I don't know if I'm just imagining this, but either way, this was very rough to watch even for Formula E standings. In terms of predictions, of course, there's no real way to make a proper prediction, but I am rooting for Pascal Wehrlein and still secretly hoping that Nick Cassidy can finally get the title he definitely deserves after the last 2 years. Either way, this is the perfect time for you to let me know your predictions for this upcoming FE season down in the comments, and in the meantime, we move on to our karting report. I may have said last week that we had the last European karting event of the year, but there was one more proper, well, I guess international competition left, the Champions of the Future Academy final, the 6th of 6 rounds, and of course this is the sort of series designed to promote more girls in the worlds of karting. We begin with the mini category, where Bruno Priam quietly won the title while Nicolo Perico made his way onto the top step in the last race of the year. Of course, we do talk about Nicolo Perico quite a bit on the channel, but since I highlighted it last week, I wanted to point out that this time he can in fact hold his own against older competition, so quite a good thing to know. It won't take him long to start winning regularly in these sorts of grids either, I don't think. Bruno Priam on the other hand was of course a very solid young lad throughout the year, but not overly stunning in my books. This is the first major title to his name as far as I could figure out, but of course he has been a front runner in the IEME Euro Series across the year. Albert Tam had another good run to end his mini career after winning in Cremona 2 weeks ago. He was one of the key front runners throughout this event, even though he only scored a single podium at the end. In the OKN Juniors, 2 races with the same story played out, with James Anagnostiaitis and Toby Gale taking turns dominating from the front and charging to the podium from the back. James Anagnostiaitis, of course the Australian Mercedes Junior, locked in the title with a sort of fitting win in the last race, but for me Toby Gale was the star of the weekend. He is a little hit or miss as a driver, but when he's on, he is really on, and I would love to have him in FIA competition. I don't think it's going to happen. His brother is also more competing in the IEME side of things and also competing here in the Champions of the Future Academy, so I don't think it is in his future, but again I feel like he would be an awesome addition in the COK FIA world. And then last but not least, for the OKN Seniors, the season ended just the way it began, with Luna Fluxa and Marcus Silkunas head and shoulders above the field. This means that Luna Fluxa secures her first big karting title, which is also like one of the first big international karting titles for women ever. Yes, it is only Champions of the Future Academy, but still probably, again, the biggest female karting success of the year. I don't even really think there's a case to be made for anyone else. And she should have yet another year to mature in this particular class. She is still too young to step up to F4. So let's see if she can maybe find another gear in the SICK FIA World too. Because again, she was solid this season, even on the big European stage, and despite probably being like the youngest competitor there. On the other hand, Silkunas really has those little rock star kind of vibes. He just has a swagger about him, and he can be absolutely rapid when allowed to run free, as shown in this second race. Unfortunately, on the flip side, he is also incredibly incident prone when in the middle of the pack, which often has been hindering him on like the biggest stages so far. The heartbreak of the day goes out to Hugo Herrera, ending a distant title dream as he got taken out on lap 1 of the second race. Still a memorable driver from the crop, and one of those confirmed to be testing for French F4. That's why I'm bringing it up, because again, it'll be a name we will hopefully hear more next year. Anyway, that's it from karting. It is time to talk about the news. On to everybody's favorite driver news segment. We of course had a ton of Formula 2 announcements, a lot of them coming in even today just before recording. I will not cover any of these Formula 2 related announcements here. First of all, it is way too many for a single episode. And second of all, just like last year, the grid will be largely complete, probably in like a week or something like this. So I would just rather do a proper F2 preview video in a week or two, and then we can cover every single one of these moves with the time they actually deserve. Instead, we can talk about a couple of Formula 3 related announcements. First off, we've got Joshua Dufek announced to be taking a seat at High Tech, which in my opinion is a horrifying piece of news. We have talked about Josh Dufek as, you know, someone competing for the worst driver on the grid spot in Formula 3 this year. So I really don't think he should be occupying one of the better seats on the grid. Do I think he has more potential than he's shown last year? Yeah, I would hope so, but still, this definitely feels like a wasted opportunity. Then again, he is more or less taking the seat from Cian Shields, so I guess he might be an upgrade after all. Then we had Alessandro Giusti announced to be stepping up with MP, also in Formula 3. Not a huge surprise, of course, after the testing, and I think this is a fantastic move. This is the perfect sort of lineup. Once again, MP being the sort of second or third favored team for junior drivers, I guess, for the junior drivers that don't bring a ton of budget by themselves, so he will fit in there perfectly and hopefully give Tim Tramnitz a good run for his money. Then we have a couple GB3 announcements to end on. First of all, Razor Sivirothan stepping up to the Agenti with Prema team in GB3. So this is actually a couple news combined. First of all, Razor Sivirothan stepping up to GB3. I think this is great. He has obviously had a great rookie season in British F4 and there's really no reason to stick around on the F4 level any longer, I don't think. Stepping up to Agenti with Prema is cool because obviously, in case you have missed it before, this means Prema will be competing in GB3 for the first time next year with the, well, in cooperation with Agenti. So great stuff there. Obviously means we don't know how good the team will be, but given it is Prema, we can assume he should maybe have a car worthy of a title assault. And then last but not least, we also had Will McIntyre announced to be staying in GB3, but switching squads from High-Tech to Elite Motorsports, which is a little bit of a curious move. He is going back to his Janetta Junior roots, if I remember correctly, but I feel like it is a little bit of a step down in terms of machinery. Elite has been good, and I think you could even win a title with Elite Motorsports. They certainly looked like a decent enough outfit. But yeah, it just looks like he wasn't valued enough at High-Tech maybe, or maybe he wanted to switch, go back to the team where he has found more success in the past. Who knows, but a little bit of an odd sideways move. Anyway, this was the last full race week review episode of the year because, well, if you've checked the calendar, there really isn't much coming up in the next couple of weeks. I will try to keep up with the news, but less often. I don't think weekly episodes will be required moving forward, maybe one every other week. I will definitely get one out in 2 weeks after both the Brazilian F4 and the NACAM F4 rounds have concluded, so the ones split up over the next 2 weeks. And again, this will give us a great opportunity to let you guys catch up with all the news. But instead, of course, there will still be content coming on the channel. I will bring you the aforementioned F2 review and previews and predictions and explainer videos if I have the time. So either way, keep your eyes open. There will be more content coming on the channel. And I hope to catch you in one of those future videos. Anyway, thank you so much for watching and goodbye.